Not the news that we were looking for.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's that time once again for a bonus edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. A couple of you had asked me for a basketball show, and there's a lot of news with less than a month to go leading up to the season. I love me some college hoops, just like I love me some Oregon football. So let's get into it. This episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So the big news for Oregon basketball at the moment is that Jackson Shelstad suffered an injury, and he broke his wrist, could possibly be back for the start of the season. Game 1 is November 4th at Matthew Knight Arena against Hawaii. If he's not 100%, boy, I certainly hope you don't need him in that particular game. So Dana Altman's teams have had their issues over the years with two things. Getting off to strong starts, that changed last year, of course, which led to the Ducks having their highest seed in the NCAA tournament since they went to the Final Four in 2017, and the injury bug. So I'm hopeful that we're able to maneuver those particular waters in this spot. Shelstad is everything that we hoped he would be. Like, from the moment he got to campus, he's just been a guy that lives up to the billing. He was a super highly rated recruit. He was kind of a late riser in the rankings as well relative to, where he started. And he's just been great. And he is one of the most important players on this Oregon team. You shouldn't need him against Hawaii. Even though there are a lot of new faces I'll talk about later on this Oregon basketball roster, you shouldn't need him against Hawaii at home to just go out and get a comfortable win. Like, Nate Biddle should be able to go for 20 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 blocks. And you should hold Hawaii under 40% shooting and 2 of 15 from 3. That's just what the talent gap should be. And I'll talk a little more big picture later on, but I'm really intrigued. I'm not quite as excited yet about this Oregon basketball team, but I am intrigued because of the potential. It's just kind of like football, frankly. There's an unknown quality to it. I mean, you've got Shelstad and Evans and Biddle as pieces that you know what you're getting from them. Everything else, we're going to find out. But the injury was first reported, I believe it was October 3rd or 4th, about 4 weeks before the first game, which is November 4th. The injury is reportedly a 4 to 6 week endeavor. So if it's at the front end, maybe he plays against Hawaii. If it's at the back end, then you're going to have to play a handful of matchups without him. And Oregon has some big non-conference games, but they also have plenty of matchups that, frankly, are not all that challenging. They start, their first 4 games are Hawaii, Rice, South Dakota State, and Oregon State. So for none of those games, Oregon State in college basketball, the rivalry factor, I'd say I'd really like to have Shelstad for that game. I mean, he had the game-winning shot late in the second half last year. That game was in Corvallis. The one against the Beavs is not. But the game against Auburn on November 24th, which I'm planning to go to, that's the one where you need him. That's a resume builder. That's the game that, the first 3 matchups of the year, with Shelstad being out, you should be okay. You miss opportunities to work everybody into the flow, which is why I'm really curious to see how they're going to manage this. Because yes, Evans is probably going to start. Biddle and Shelstad will start when they're fully healthy. But you have at least 2 new starters and basically all new bench players. So leading up to that Auburn game, which is the premier non-conference game that they have, they've also got San Diego State and Gonzaga on their non-conference schedule. But the balancing act is, hey, we have to have Jackson Shelstad for Big Ten play, and the rest of the season. We want to keep him healthy. And we know what Shelstad is. He doesn't need time to get acclimated to the college game. But there is an element of, boy, we'd like to at least get a couple of games in which he plays with his new teammates. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. Hopefully, he can come back and at least play against the Beavs before he plays against Auburn. It would be unfortunate if it's his first game of the year. Obviously, they've been practicing for a while, but real games action, as we know, is different. It would be really unfortunate if his first game played of the year is against a really good program in Auburn that has a new head coach with Bruce Pearl retiring and his son Steven taking over. That'd be a tough spot to be in, but it would give the new guys a lot of chances to see the court and get a lot of minutes in there. So the next question that comes to mind is the last guy I talked about from a basketball standpoint here on the show, and that's Win Lei. And so he comes over from the Chinese Basketball Association. He and Young Hansen, by the way, the Blazers' first-round pick, are apparently super close off of the court. They've played in the same league together. I think they've known each other for a long time. There have been reports that they are tight off the court. So the opportunity for them to see each other play is pretty cool. Now, Hansen was drafted by the Blazers, and Win Lei, of course, didn't go to the NBA draft because he wants to try and boost his draft stock a bit. But if he is an immediate impact guy, we're going to find out pretty quickly. And with no Shelstad in the lineup early in the game, I wonder who the primary playmaker is going to be. You know, Shelstad, obviously a guy from a scoring and assist standpoint, and Oregon's offense was much better last year when Shelstad was not just creating for himself, but creating for others. He's a really gifted passer. He's just not a high-volume assist guy. I think he was under 3 assists a game last year. I would love for him to be 4 or 5 assists per game this season when he gets into the flow of things. But if he's not there, which let's say he isn't for the first couple games, who's running the show? Like, you don't have a veteran like Keyshawn Barthelemy. He's not there anymore. TJ Bamba's not there anymore. Is it going to be Win Lei? Maybe. Is it TK Simpkins, the Elon transfer? Maybe. Is it Jamari Phillips, the former 4-star that barely played last year? Is he running the show? I don't know. I think that is a legitimate question mark in my mind, but I'm interested to see which options emerge as, you know, legitimate alternatives, because you have a lot to replace from last year's team that's not on the roster anymore. I'll get to that more in the second segment. But that's the big news, that, you know, the timing isn't horrible. Like, losing Shelstad for 4 to 6 weeks, if that's, you know, you obviously hope it doesn't come back during the season. That becomes a concern here as well. It's a broken bone, not a muscle strain, so hopefully it just sets. They don't rush him back and he's good to go. But yeah, I'd rather miss him now than in the middle of the season, I guess. But, you know, with the first game so close, like, it stings a little. But this has just been, there's just something in the water, that wonderful Oregon water that leads to injuries. It feels like a lot for Dana Altman and company. But when I get to the second segment, I'll talk about the outlook or the roster for those that haven't thought about it, and the names that are there for a while, because there are a lot of new faces. There have been 2 guys added within, you know, just the last couple of months, and that's somewhat unusual, but now it looks pretty important, especially with Win Lei, and, you know, maybe he's point guard. You know, his highlight reel is certainly, and his numbers over in the CBA were, you know, ones that had a lot of assists and playmaking aspects to his game. Does that translate to American college basketball? We might find out here in the early going. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. But for those who have not thought about hoops in a while and maybe want a bit of a refresher, I've got that coming for you. Because, boy, this team, it's kind of like the football, kind of like the football team. First, this episode brought to you by Peloton. Peloton shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton's built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Kind of like how the Oregon coaching staff for basketball, football, baseball, softball are trying to get their teams to peak at the right time and be at their best. That is what Peloton's trying to help you do for your fitness goals. So let them do just that and check them out. Let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That's OnePeloton.com. Check them out at onepeloton.com. Yes, even bonus shows have second segment sips. So let's talk about this Oregon basketball roster and why it's so fascinating. There's kind of a Oregon secondary vibe here where I see potential. I think the secondary's probably got a bit more, but I see potential, but it's just a mystery. I don't know because I've never seen these guys play together, and I have an idea of what they are capable of. But the guys that Oregon has brought in this offseason, you've got TK Simpkins, the guard from Elon, who was a high teens point per game scorer over there. Not the best league, but still interesting combo guard, kind of a Keyshawn Bartholomew size. Is he as clutch as Keyshawn Bartholomew? I don't know. But, I mean, who is? That guy just hit so many big shots over the last couple seasons. If Bartholomew had been healthy 2 years ago, Oregon goes to the Sweet 16. They beat Creighton 100%. With the team that was just Dante and Kuznard. So they brought in Ige Demir, another one of those late cycle additions. I think that happened in July, if I remember correctly. He comes from the Turkish Basketball League. They brought in Sean Stewart, transfer power forward from Duke. I think he will platoon with KJ Evans at the 4 spot. Former pretty highly rated recruit. He comes from Ohio State, actually. He was at Duke before that. They brought in his brother, Miles Stewart, as well from Howard. I don't think Miles Stewart is going to play. I think that's just, hey, do we have a spot on the roster for my brother? Sure. That's the way it reads to me. We'll see if I end up being right. I feel pretty confident I am. Sean Stewart is a guy that I think has a Supreme Cook type role, kind of the energy big off the bench. You know, last year he's around 5 to 6 points and rebounds per game. He's not a big time shooter or anything. He's just a big physical presence. I think this Oregon depth in the front court is really good when you consider that you've got KJ Evans and Nate Biddle to start, and you're backing him up with Sean Stewart and Ige Demir. You know, Demir's really athletic. There's definitely some N'Faly Dante vibes there. And I think that if, you know, you look at those 4 in the front court, you have to feel pretty good about that. So the other guys that are interesting or that are new, I should say, one's more interesting, I think, than the other. JJ Frakes is a freshman, 6'5", sharpshooter, kind of bouncy. I don't know. He wasn't a super highly rated recruit. Maybe he surprises as a true freshman, but the newcomer that I am most excited to see is Devon Pryor, the transfer from Texas who has legitimate NBA draft potential. He is 6'7", really athletic, can shoot the ball. Didn't do a ton at Texas. I think that was more a function of him being young, maybe not fully ready to go. Texas had some other talent. They had a first-round pick last year. I forget the guy's name, but he was really good, and I think Pryor was lost in the shuffle, but really interesting physical prospect. And here's the thing. Once, let's say Shelstad is ready to go early in the season, or hopefully healthy by the end of the year, and let's say everybody's like mostly healthy. The 5 guys that are going to start for Oregon basketball, kind of unknown, at least from my vantage point. Maybe some of you feel more confident about it. It's going to be this guy. It's going to be that. I can give you 3 guys that I know are going to start. And that's Jackson Shelstad, KJ Evans, and Nate Biddle. Evans was a de facto starter last year. There was a really great back and forth between him, bringing him more defense, and Brandon Angel, who brought more offense to the 4 position. And I think that, KJ Evans' offense is a big storyline for this Oregon basketball team. He has just got to become a 10 to 12 point a game scorer. He can't sit for a third straight year in kind of the 5 to 6 range. Like this Oregon roster, Sean Stewart's not going to go out and give you 18 to 20. Sean Stewart can't score at all 3 levels like KJ Evans can. He has to be better with his post moves and be a more consistent shooter. That's just something that really, really needs to happen for this team to get back to the NCAA tournament and put themselves in a position to make a run, which is what they were in last year. And unfortunately, they lost to Arizona. But Pryor is definitely the most interesting addition of all of these guys. Not that, there isn't potential with a guy like Simpkins or Demir, or I don't like what Sean Stewart brings to the table. No, I do. It's just that Pryor to me has, based on his athletic traits, 15 to 17 point a game ceiling. And if Shelstad is out in the early going, and we'll see where Win Lei factors into this calculation as well. But I think Pryor is, of all the newcomers, the guy I have the highest hopes for. I think from a scoring standpoint, one of Win Lei or TK Simpkins has a role, but there are two other names to keep an eye on. So Des Lindsey and Jamari Phillips are those names. I'll start with Des Lindsey, former JUCO transfer, 6'5", 6'6", really athletic, solid shooter. Dana loves his JUCO guys. He was hurt last year. Would he have had a role? Maybe. There were some minutes to be had coming off the bench, but as we know, Dana, like most college basketball coaches, condenses the rotations down as the season goes along. We saw that with Jamari Phillips. He had some spot minutes early in the year, and then by the time they got to the NCAA tournament, they were not playing Phillips really at all. So Dana loves his JUCO guys, and Lindsey has not. I actually don't know if he's logged a single minute as a Duck, because he came in before last season and then he got hurt, and so he never really saw the court. So I'm interested to see if Lindsey and or Phillips has a role, but Jamari Phillips to me is one of the more interesting names on this Oregon basketball team, because Pryor, like I said, is the interesting newcomer, but Phillips is the most interesting returner, because I don't know what he's going to be just because we haven't seen it yet. But his potential is immense, and there is a void that I think Jamari Phillips can fill. Keyshawn Barthelemy was, for the last several years, the perfect sixth man. Like, if I were to now, would I love for him to be a little bigger and better at the defensive end? Sure. But he was the perfect sixth man because he came off the bench and he was reliable, instant offense who scored at all three levels. That's what you're looking for. Phillips has the skill set to be that guy. He was originally committed to Arizona, flipped to the Ducks, didn't play a ton last year. Frankly, if I'd done a ranking of top transfer candidates, he would have been near the top of the list. Obviously, Mookie Cook left in the offseason, but Phillips stayed, and I think he stayed because he knows this is my time to take a leap forward. And with no Barthelemy and no Bamba, and Raheem Moss didn't give you a ton last year, but when you take away those guys, you're filling them with somebody. I think Phillips is going to be one of those dudes. Like, if he comes off the bench and is an 8 to 10 point per game scorer, let me pull up Barthelemy's stats real quick, because he was so big and he made so many timely buckets for Oregon last year. That was a theme as I talked about him throughout the season. Last year, Barthelemy was a 10-point-a-game scorer, 2.5 assists. He shot 41% from three-point land. It was the best mark of his career. So I think that his importance, Phillips' importance, can't be overstated, because someone's got to fill that void, especially in the early going. And this is why the first few games, even though Oregon should handle Hawaii, Rice, and South Dakota State, and to a lesser extent Oregon State, I think that'll be tougher. But you're playing those games without your all Big Ten selection at point guard in Shelstad that could give you 20 to 25 on any given night. Someone's going to have to fill those points for those games, and I think that'll help them get into a flow in the early part of the season. Maybe it's Simpkins. Maybe it's Pryor. Maybe it's Phillips. Maybe it's Des Lindsey. Maybe J.J. Frakes shocks me here as a true freshman. So I think that is, again, it's fascinating. Now, last year, I had really high hopes, and Oregon lived up to those hopes, by the way, for the basketball team. This year, I described my feeling as close to what I felt with football. Excited, but curious. You've got young talent that hasn't done it at the college level yet. Some guys make that jump, and some guys don't. Some guys are Dante Moore and DeCorian Moore. Some guys are Arch Manning. Where are these guys all going to fall? a lot of interesting pieces, but that's a brief rundown of where, the roster is at, the depth they have, and what. And by the way, well, I'll talk about him later on the show. But Jamari Phillips and Des Lindsey, like, they could be the guys that emerge. Like, who would be the best example in Oregon football? Ife Obadegwu, probably. He, of course, got dinged up in his true freshman season. But, that's a guy that was on the roster last year and you never heard about, never talked about for whatever reason. And now you look up and you're like, oh, he's a really important part of the team. Phillips and Lindsey could be one of those guys this year. And I think Devon Pryor, the Texas transfer, is really interesting. So I like the front court depth. I will like the backcourt situation once Jackson Shelstad gets back, but it gives a chance for, Simpkins and Phillips and Win Lei to try and figure out which of those guys can, earn the trust of Dana Altman going forward. And then we'll see how he manages the rotations. But I like the way the schedule sets up. You got 4 games that you should win before you take on Auburn, and then you've got San Diego State for a second straight year as well. A couple of Big Ten games with USC and UCLA before they go back into the non-conference slate against UC Davis, Portland, Gonzaga, and Omaha. So I'd say going into conference play, I'd like to see Oregon have like the start of conference play, not counting the USC UCLA games. Like in the non-conference, would like to see them lose no more than 2 games. That would be a good outcome. But if you want me to do another basketball bonus show closer to tip-offs this year, as always, let me know. I can usually make that happen. And I still have more to get to on this one because Oregon got a big commitment, and now they're going big game hunting. First, this episode brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots, they run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood and let it thrive. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base or the spot with the best wings for game day or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together, which is what sports are about. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives, and they're able to run on Square. You've probably used Square several times, whether you realize it or not. I know that I have. All the time I go out and buy stuff, and Square is where I make my financial transaction to pay for whatever I'm getting that particular day. And it makes it really easy. And so Square is here to help businesses thrive, which lets the neighborhood thrive. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. So, the NFL season's here, and FanDuel is making an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Oregon this Saturday is down to a 7.5-point favorite. Maybe the public is riding Indiana too much, and you feel like there's value. And you think the Ducks are winning by double digits? Oregon 7.5. If you think Oregon is going to stumble this week, maybe you're feeling risky. Maybe you want to hedge your happiness in the biggest way possible and put money on the Indiana money line. Whatever you want, FanDuel's got it. College football, the NFL, and beyond. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. So one thing to watch when you have an older coach, and if you wonder, is he still the guy? Does he still have it? Dana Altman does. That much has been established. Back-to-back years in the round of 32. There are only a handful of programs that have accomplished that. One thing to look at, though, think Mac Brown at North Carolina. How's the recruiting? Is he still able to connect with young guys? Can he still get them? The answer is yes. So Oregon picked up a big basketball recruiting win recently with Tajh Ariza, who's a borderline consensus 5-star recruit. Some services have 5 stars, some have 4, whatever. Tajh Ariza, yes, the son of NBA great Trevor Ariza. I mean, like the prototypical 3-and-D guy, Trevor Ariza. His son committed to Oregon last week in the class of 2026. And he's a really exciting prospect. 6'9", shoots the ball well, has like the slightest of hitches when I watch him shoot, but it's nothing that is overly severe. Good athlete, well-rounded game. Really like what he brings to the table. I was trying to come up with a comparison for him. I didn't have one, because Dylan Brooks was not a great athlete. He's a great player, obviously. He's still in the NBA. But, he wasn't known for his poster dunks. Ariza can get up there a bit. So the Ariza recruiting victory is one that you look at and go, that's a good sign. Another name to consider in the class of 2026 that I don't know how it plays out is Kendre Harrison, who's one of Oregon football's top recruits next cycle, who plays tight end. He is 6'7". He could be an Elgin Cook type for Oregon basketball. And last I've heard, he plans to play both. Don't know how that works and whatnot, but football season ends in January. Basketball season runs obviously through March. So maybe he'd be able to do both. We'll see. But here's the name that you need to keep an eye on that would send me over the moon level excitement going into next year. Again, I am cautiously optimistic while keeping an eye on how all the new pieces gel for this year's Oregon team. Next year, though, you won't have Nate Biddle. Maybe you'd have Jackson Shelstad, maybe you won't. But the name to keep an eye on is Tyran Stokes. So Stokes is, by I think a couple different services, I know On3 has him as the number 1 overall recruit. What's helpful, talk about this with football all the time, when you're trying to go out and get a big name on the trail, have somebody else to pair him with and say, hey, why don't you come play with this guy? Look at the vision that we've got for it. Look at what we're trying to put together. A starting 5. I'm trying to keep my own. Again, this is a recruitment. It's early, but keep an eye. If Oregon had a starting 5 next year of Jackson Shelstad, Tyran Stokes, Tajh Ariza, KJ Evans, and they'd figure out the shooting guard position. Maybe it'd be Devon Pryor. He's got a couple years of eligibility left. That would be a collection of talent that we haven't seen since the Final Four squad, which was indeed a squad. True freshman Peyton Pritchard. You had Dorsey. You had Brooks. You had Jordan Belt. This would be a freakishly talented group. So Stokes is down to Oregon, Louisville, USC, Kentucky, and Kansas. And again, really good sign that Dana Altman can go out and at least be in the Final 5 with those sort of heavy-hitting basketball schools. Because Kansas, Kentucky, Louisville, big-time brands. Now, Louisville's been down the last couple of years. USC is a good brand at the moment, but not as big. Kentucky and Kansas are the ones you'd probably say, just from a broad picture standpoint, are the favorites. But if you've got Tajh Ariza and Tyran Stokes, boy. I would you would see a level of excitement and hype for an Oregon sports team that rivals any team I've talked about. So just keep an eye. The Ariza pickup is great. What's Oregon going to be at the center spot next year without Nate Biddle? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But at the moment, big picture takeaway for Oregon basketball, they're in a good place. Not as good as football. Heck, not even as good as softball at the moment. But I think you can compare Dana Altman's program with Oregon baseball. There's a certain floor, and the question is, how do they hit that ceiling? And you see the plan coming together. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to going out and executing the postseason. For this year's team, like I said, interested. Really interested. But last year, you had Shelstad, you had Biddle, I knew what he could do. You had Angel, who was a proven commodity. You had TJ Bamba, who was a proven commodity. Keyshawn Bartholomew, you knew what he was. There was just all this. I hyped him up all year, and they lived up to it because you had known entities. There are a lot of unknowns, especially with the Shelstad injury early on. So hopefully he's able to get healthy. But overall, like where the program is at. So some of you asked for a basketball show. Ask and you shall receive. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And go Ducks.